I think we should be good to go for the stream. So we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you everybody for joining. I think we've got some people in the back still working their way over here, but I am really excited for this talk. Jason is joining us to speak on presenting, which is a really important topic, especially information security. It's easy to get excited about something technical and to ramble, but if we can't communicate that to those around us, then we're not really doing the job as best as we can. So I'm excited for this. Sean the Rapture, who's around, has seen this talk at DerbyCon. Oh, there he is, right there, and has said nothing but good stuff about this talk. So this is my first time. I'm really looking forward to it. Just so you know, Jason is the content and community director at Black Hills Information Security, and shameless plug, he does a Twitch stream that you guys should check out as well. I think twice a week. Is that right?
That is correct. Tuesday nights and Friday afternoons.
Awesome. So with that, please welcome Jason.
Hello. Hey, everybody. I'm just, I'm still like catching my bearings, right? Like I'm in a virtual world, but actually sitting at my computer, and there's this like whole, like trying to just project myself into this virtual world. And it's fine. It's fine. Like I'm not having any existential crisis. There's nothing going on. Everything is fine. I do want to thank Infosec Oasis for the invitation. This is my first time doing something in VR, and it was one of those like, yeah, sure, let's try it. And so I wanted to get started today by just pausing for a moment. And I don't know if you can do this in real life. I don't know if you have the controls to do this, but just I will imagine if you are, raise your hand if you are shy. Oh, wow, that's awesome. I can see a couple of hands go up. That's fantastic. There's a few people who are raising their hands in real life, but not in a virtual world. And so you can't see it right now because I don't have the control to do so, but I am raising my hand. I am shy. I'm a shy person, and it's one of the reasons why I do and don't want to be here right now. I do want to be here right now because I want to share this knowledge with you. I want to present here at Infosec Oasis. I do want to teach you how to do like presenting, but I also want to teach you like the psychological reason why people like talks and why you should present in a certain way. When I say the word should, I don't want to should all over you, but like there's ways to present that people like to hear a presentation. And so that's why I do want to be here. The reason I don't want to be here is because I'm shy and I'm scared and I'm nervous and I'm afraid you'll reject me. And the fact that this is being recorded and I'm in VR, and I was like mulching my backyard just about an hour ago, and I was snapping at my wife, and she's like, hey, I need you to do this. And I was like, I know. And the reason I was snapping is because I was nervous and I was anxious, and it was coming out in those ways. And I don't want to be here because I can see you seeing me, and that feels vulnerable. And I want to say all this up front because I don't know if you've ever had the chance to present or if anyone's ever asked you to present, but as soon as someone asks you to present, you start and I start playing the what if game. What if I'm not good enough? What if I bomb? What if my material isn't very good? What if someone's smarter in the audience? What if? And we start asking all the what ifs, and we get to the point where we talk ourselves out of it. I could come up with 1,000 reasons not to be here today. But the main reason, the main thing that we think when we decide not to speak is that I'm not enough. And I don't know if you've ever felt that way, but I feel that way from time to time. When I'm standing up here right now, looking at you, in the back of my head, I'm thinking, I'm not enough. I'm not enough to talk about this topic. I'm not enough as a person. I'm not enough reputation. I'm not enough experience. I'm not enough. And that is what keeps me from wanting to present. And what it takes is courage and bravery to fight through all those feelings of not enough to still stand up here and do this. And so if you are standing out there yourself, if you're looking at me right now giving this presentation, and I do believe that anyone that shows up to a presentation on presenting has self-selected yourself as a person who's interested in presenting. So if you're standing there right now, you're like, oh, I've always thought about presenting, but I've never really, or maybe you are a presenter. But whatever the case is, that you have fought through these feelings of I'm not enough. And hopefully as we get through this talk today, you'll see that even with me doing this for 20 years, I still feel like I'm not enough. But here's the main takeaway. The main takeaway from today, the one thing, if you don't forget, or if you don't remember anything else, the main takeaway is this. And I'm just going to pause for a second so that way it can be nice and clear and concise. Never deny someone the opportunity to learn from you. Never deny someone the opportunity to learn from you, because you have something in your head that could benefit somebody else. You have something that you've learned over your lifetime that could benefit someone else. You know a technique that could benefit someone else. You know a tool that can benefit someone else. You know a life lesson that can benefit someone else. And you have it inside of you. And when you choose to think that you're not enough, you're denying someone the opportunity to learn that. And so the main takeaway from today is, please do not deny someone the opportunity to learn from you. Now, I'm human, you're human, we're all human. And since we're all human, we all have the same emotions. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more, but I'm going to dive into the rest of this talk so that way you can have actionable techniques and actionable ideas in the back of your mind that you can then use when you give your own presentations. So the whole real quick, who am I? My name is Jason Blanchard. Like they said, I'm the content community director of Black Hills Information Security, and I've been public speaking for 20 years. I started speaking for the very first time 20 years ago in the year 2001, 2000. Oh God, that was 20 years ago. Okay, so I started speaking in 2001, and I started in church. They would get up and say, do you want to say something? I'm like, all right, yeah, sure. And I was talking one time in church, and this one pastor came up and said, hey, Jason, could you come talk at my church? And I was like, sure. I was living in Korea at the time. I was stationed in Korea. I was a soldier in Korea. And this guy comes up and says, I have this church that's off base down in Yongsan or someplace. Would you come and speak? And I was like, sure. So I get on a bus. I drive 2 hours in this bus on a Sunday morning, and I get there, and like I feel like I'm going to talk for 5 minutes. Like they never declared how long I was going to speak. They never said what I was going to speak on. He just said, I'd like you to talk. And I was like, okay. So I get there and I was like, so what would you like me to talk about? And he's like, well, you're the sermon. And I was like, well, what do you mean I'm the sermon? He's like, you're the whole thing. Everyone's here for you today. And all of a sudden I was thrown into just standing up in front of people and like, I don't know what I'm going to say. And I'm glad that that was my first experience, like public speaking, because it's never been that bad ever since. And so since I've had that terrible experience, I remember that for the last 20 years. And that's where it gets me through each and every time I do need to present. It's not that bad. As a part of Black Hills, I present for up to 5 hours a week. Like 5 hours a week, I'm on Twitch. I'm talking through webcasts. There's thousands of people tuning in. There's people watching the recordings. And each and every time, I have to fight through those feelings of I'm not enough. Each and every time. I have a Twitch stream that happens twice a week. I help people job hunt. It's on Tuesday nights from 7 to 9 p.m., Fridays from 1 to 3 p.m. And I've been doing it for a year now, and I'll continue to do it for another year. And so far, 77 people have landed new jobs during the pandemic, doing jobs that they want to do. And I'm proud and happy about that. But I want you to think back to a year ago. Prior to starting it, I felt like I wasn't enough. And there was times where I didn't want to do it. And my wife said, why aren't you doing this? It's something that you talk about doing all the time. Why aren't you doing it? And I just said, I'm afraid. I'm scared. And she said, well, what if I do it with you? And I was like, okay. Now, thankfully, about 3 weeks into doing the live stream, someone showed up and said, Jason, I found a job based on the stuff that you cover. And I was like, oh, thank God. Oh, thank God. Because internally, I was like, I don't know how to job hunt during the pandemic. Like, I don't know what the heck I'm talking about, but I did, but I didn't. And so if you're standing there right now saying, I don't know if I know what I'm talking about, talk about it and see if it helps. Like, don't talk yourself out of not talking about it. So let's keep going. I was born a storyteller, just like all human beings. Every human being I've ever met is a storyteller. Some of them are better than others, but every human being is a storyteller. That's just the way we are. We like to tell stories from the time we were born until the time we get old and die. We are storytellers at heart. And we are just natural storytellers. And I want you to think back to when you were a child and you played with toys. Because I loved playing with toys. I was an only child. Kind of. I had a brother that was 7 years older than me. So essentially, I was an only child because a 7-year-old doesn't play with an infant and a 14-year-old doesn't play with a 7-year-old. And then by the time he was 17, he left and joined the army. So I was essentially an only child growing up with this older brother that would watch after me every once in a while. But because I was an only child, my mom did this really cool thing where she would buy me G.I. Joe toys. That was probably the best thing she ever did as a single mom growing up. And I know she did all these other things and took care of me and supported me and all that. But as a child, the thing I thought was the best was getting G.I. Joe toys. And so I would build this most elaborate setup of G.I. Joe toys, and you would have Dusty there, and you would have Duke, and you'd have Flint, and all the other characters, and then Cobra Commander, and then all these other people. And I would have my entire room just set up. It would take almost a day to 2 days to set up all my toys. And then guess what happened? Well, all of a sudden the missile comes flying through. And then the truck is like, I got it. Like the helicopter comes flying. I was like, and then Cobra Commander's like, I'll get you. And there's explosions happening, and Scarlet's there, and this is happening. Lady J and Snake Eyes comes in right with the big fight with Storm Shadow, and I'm like, this is awesome. And then the dog would come in and grab the guy and drag him under, and this epic battle would go on for 30 minutes. And I was in control of all of it because I was a storyteller, just like all of us. And so when you think back to being a kid, I mean, we're all natural storytellers. We pick up a couple of toys and we understand storytelling. And so infuse storytelling into the presentations. And so I'm going to show you how to do that here in a second. But here's the cool thing that happened as I got older. As I got older, I had a child of my own, and I had my daughter, and she is an only child as well. And there was times where she said, Daddy, will you play with me? And so I'd get down on the ground with her and we'd start playing with toys. And it's the same thing. We start playing with toys, we set them up, and then all of a sudden something happens, and then you play through, and then it has a resolution at the end, and you're like, that was fun. And here's a side note. For those of you that are parents or new parents or going to be parents one day, I just want to give you a tip. As a person who likes to tell stories, my daughter, when she was about 3 or 4 years old, she wanted me to tell her the same bedtime story every single night. And I don't know if you've ever gone through this, but to have your child want to hear the same bedtime story, you get to the point where I'm just tired of telling. I know it's going to happen. I don't want to tell you anymore. So I started doing this. So here's the big takeaway if you're a new parent or if you want to become a parent someday and you're going to do bedtime stories with your daughter or son. They don't know anything. And what I mean by that is they're a clean slate. They have no idea what has happened before they were born. So when I would I was like, sweetheart, I want to tell you a different story tonight. And she's like, oh, okay. I was like, I want to tell you the story of a young space farmer. And he's got this sister, right? And this sister, let's call her Princess Leia. And so she is trying to get the Death Star plans away from the bad guy, and his name's Darth Vader. And she's like, oh my gosh, this is really good. And essentially what I did is I just told her the entire epic story of Star Wars, but I told it to her because I could, because she had no idea. She'd never seen Star Wars. And she's like, this is amazing. And I was like, I know, right? Now, when she did get older, she did see the movie, and there was a lot of conversation that took place around that. We were like, okay, so, and she's like, I can't believe they stole your story. And I was like, I know, right? Like, they totally copied it. All the way down to the lightsabers. So you have that, and you can tell it. No, that's fine. So back to we are all storytellers. I want you for the next 6 or 7 days, I want you to hear the stories that your kids tell, that your spouse tells, that your friends tell, that you're on a Zoom call and people tell. And I want you to start picking up on this one thing that I'm going to harp on over and over and over and over again during the rest of my presentation. And it is the 5 essential elements of a story. So it's the 5 key moments of any story. It is the hook. It is the beginning. It is the middle, the climax, and the end. It is the hook, the beginning, the middle, the climax, and the end. Whenever we tell a story, it follows those 5 simple steps. There's a hook. There's a, hey, the missile just flew in. Like, that's the G.I. Joe story. It's the setting up the characters and my daughter saying to one character, would you like some tea right now? And like, that is the beginning of the story. So we are all natural storytellers. If you think back to when someone's like, hey, let me tell you a story, or you have a friend of yours that says, oh, guess what happened to me the other night? There's this element of a question that starts us on this whole quest. And so when you start thinking about it and you start analyzing the way that you tell stories, you follow the same 5 steps every single time. You have a hook, there's a beginning, there's a middle, there's a climactic moment, and there's the ending. And we're just naturally good at doing this. Now, here's what I want you to do. Apply that to your presentations. Apply it to your presentations. Like, a presentation has a hook. It's got a beginning. It's got a middle. It's got a climax. It's got an end. And I'm going to show you how to do all that before we get to, and when I say show, I'm going to tell you how to do all that before we get to the end of this. I do want to talk about movies. So where did I learn this from? Where did I gather all this information? So like I said, I'm a natural storyteller. And so just like any natural storyteller, I said, I want to go into the military to be a combat cameraman. And you're like, wait, what? Yeah, so I was surprised that the military had combat camera people too. Like, the recruiter came to me and said, Jason, would you like to join the military? And I said, absolutely not. And he's like, are you sure? Because your GT score is real high. And I was like, okay. And then he said, well, at this point, you could get any job in the military. And I said, can I be a cameraman? He's like, oh, I don't know. And so he came back like 3 days later. He's like, we have camera people. And I was like, all right, let's do it. And so I joined the Army for 6 years to be a camera operator. 6 years. But while I was in the military, they taught me to be an editor. And so I want you to take the word editor, if you've ever seen the term editor, or person who edits movies or TV shows. I want you to then say editor equals the manipulator of human feelings. Because that's what an editor is. They're a manipulator of human feelings. If you've ever cried during a movie, if you've ever laughed during a movie, if you've ever been anxious during a movie, if you've ever been angry during a movie, if you've ever had an emotion during a movie or TV show, it's because an editor manipulated footage and sound and music and elements to make you feel that way. And so what I learned over time by being an editor was, if I cut it like this, I can make people anxious. But if I cut it like this, I can make people happy. If I cut it like this, I can make them sad. If I cut it like this, I was like, oh, this is quite powerful. And so I was able to learn how to use like this hook, beginning, middle, climax, and end. But I was able to figure out, how can I manipulate human emotions throughout the thing I'm making. And that's all going to play in just a few minutes. So I'm going to talk about movies for a second, because that's where I learned how to do all this stuff. And I'm going to ruin all movies for you from this point forward. So if you want to get movies ruined, continue listening. If you don't want to hear movies ruined, I guess you could pause or like silence it for the next 3 minutes. Oh, someone left. They're like, no, don't ruin movies. Okay, so I get it. All right, so I'm going to ruin movies for you. And when I ruin movies for you, you're like, you didn't ruin it for me. You just revealed all the things I already thought. Okay. All right, so when a movie is written, it follows a formula. They follow the same hook, beginning, middle, climax, and end, but it's actually more formulaic than that. Like, when you learn the formula of movie script writing and then movie editing, you're like, darn it. Okay, so here's how it goes. I want you to take a 90-minute movie, which is the average length of most movies. It's 90 minutes, so it's an hour plus 30, so it's an hour and a half long. And a 90-minute movie breaks down like this. On page 3 or minute 3, you have the introduction of the main character. So by minute 3, you've introduced the main character in the film. So page 3, minute 3. By page 10, there's an inciting incident. There's an inciting incident that happens to the main character that causes them to, something happens out of the norm, which takes them from the life that they were living to this new thing that's happening. So think of it as Bilbo shows the ring to the other hobbit that I can't think of right now, where all of you are like, it's Jason, it's I don't know, I can't remember. It's oh God, that's gonna hurt. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Okay, so there's the inciting incident at page 10, minute 10. On page 30, the hero goes on a quest. And so all the things that have been leading up to this, the person goes on a quest. And so that's when that character, I can't remember, from that movie Lord of the Rings, goes on to destroy the ring. But also Lord of the Rings is like 8 or 9 hours long, and so this changes the formula there. So that's not the same. Let's go to Ghostbusters. So in the first 3 minutes, you see the first ghost in the library. On page 10, they're like, we should be Ghostbusters. And on page 30, that's when they actually have the firehouse and the car and they become Ghostbusters. And so if you're like, oh, okay, I get it now. Okay, so on page 45, everything's going really well for the main character. They're on their quest, things are going well, things are like, oh yeah, Ghostbusters are busting ghosts. Like, who are you gonna call? Everyone's famous, that's great. And by page 60, it's never been better. Like, life is fantastic, things are good. This is like, oh, stuff is really going well for the main character, and then it takes a turn. And they start falling into this thing where things are not going well. And by page 75, all is bad. And so in Ghostbusters, they were doing everything right, but then that guy wants to shut them down, and then all of a sudden he's getting shut down, and then they lose their packs, they lose everything. There's Gozer or something, there's the Keymaster. All this stuff is happening, and it looks like all is lost by page 75. But by page 75, that's when the hero finds something within themselves where they have the ability to like bring people together, or they get the magic ring, or they get the sword, or something happens where they can now finish the quest and vanquish the bad guy and all that other stuff. And that's page 75. And that leads for the next 15 minutes, the climactic moment. And then if you never noticed, movies from the 80s and early 90s finish immediately. They finish immediately. If you go back and watch Die Hard follows this formula to a T. Page 3, page 10, page 30, page 45, page 60, page 75, page 90. And like all of a sudden, like Die Hard, he's flying off this roof, things are exploding, Hans Gruber's falling, and then it's over. Like within the next 2 minutes, it's just over. And you're like, wow. Because they knew, just finish it. Just get it over. Everyone's excited. And what you want people to do is leave the theater with the feeling of the climactic moment. Because when you leave the theater with that climactic moment, you remember that feeling and it carries on with you. It's the same way when I remember the first time I ever watched The Matrix. When I left the movie, watching The Matrix, and I left the movie theater, I was like, oh my God, that was incredible. And then I don't know if you had this feeling too. You're like, are we in the Matrix? I think we're in the Matrix. I think we're actually, because you want to have that feeling as you leave. So if all movies follow a formula, then it's okay for your presentation to follow a formula. I'm going to talk about The Lion King for just a second. In page 3, there's the whole, I can't do the song, but they like hold up Simba, right? They hold up Simba at Pride Rock. That's page 3. By page 10, he's like, all the things to the right belongs to us. I'm like, oh, okay. And page 30 is when Mufasa dies. And if you're right now, you're like, spoiler, Jason, spoiler. I'm sorry. I'm super sorry. No, I wanted to talk about Lion King for a second, because my daughter's favorite movie of The Lion King is when Mufasa dies. And I don't know if you know how a father feels watching their daughter watch the scene over and over again when the wildebeest tramples Mufasa, and how she keeps going, again. It's like, that's just wrong. So that follows the same formula where now Simba runs away, and then Pride Rock falls into despair, but he's singing Hakuna Matata and he's learning to live his own life. And then the other female lion comes and tells him, here's what's going on. Then he battles Scar towards the end, in the climactic moment. He actually has what it takes. And then at the end, he becomes the Lion King. Okay, so we're good, right? I just ruined all movies for you. It follows minute 3, minute 10, minute 30, minute 45, minute 60, minute 75, minute 90. Okay, good. All right. So since you know the formula, well, then just use the formula. Understand how human beings like to hear stories and use the same formula, and I'll continue to show you how that all works. Now, I want to talk to you about how human beings perceive information. So I'm going to tell you that how edits work. I don't know if you've ever thought about how editing works in a movie, but I want you to just like slow your mind down for a second. When you watch a movie, And when you watch your next movie, you watch your next TV show, you watch your next documentary, you watch your next thing, I want you to think about how it goes from a wide shot to a medium shot to a close up to a wide shot to a medium shot to a close up to a wide shot to a medium shot to a close up to a wide shot to a medium. Like a movie's always cutting. And we don't even think about how it's always cutting, but it's always cutting. A movie is always cutting. It's actually cutting every 3 seconds on average. When you watch a movie, every 3 seconds, it's going to cut to another shot. Or the camera is going to move in such a way that introduces a new character, or there's something that happens. And so when you watch movies from now on, if you sit there, you go 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000, cut. 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000, cut. 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000, cut. And you're like, Jason, could you please stop ruining movies? Could you please stop ruining TV shows? I'm sorry. I taught film school for 9 years, and I feel so sorry for my students because what happens is people who want to go to film school love movies. And then when they get to film school, we teach them how movies are made. And by the end of it, they're like, I can't watch a movie anymore because I just analyze everything. I know exactly what's happening. I understand the camera angles. And you're like, yeah, I know. I'm sorry. The same thing happened to me like 20 years ago. So that is how movies get made. So let's go back to the 3-second edits. 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000. Here's why it's 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000. Because that's how long it takes your brain to see something, to recognize what that thing is, and then to relate it to something else from your past. So let's talk about a yellow house. So let's say we're watching a TV show, we're watching a movie, and we see this yellow house. It's called an establishing shot. We see the outside of a yellow house. And when we see that yellow house, they'll normally stay on it for 3 seconds because it takes your brain, I see a yellow house. I see something. It's a yellow house. That reminds me of a yellow house in my old neighborhood because that's what filmmakers are hoping for. That's what, when we present, we're hoping for, is for our content to be relatable to the audience. So when you see something, okay, I see it, I understand it, I relate it. Okay, I see it, I understand it, I relate it. And so that's why we cut every 3 seconds, because that's how long it takes the human brain to do that. Now, if you shift to a 4-second edit, now what the brain does is it says, I see something, I recognize something, I relate that to something, and then it makes an additional leap to relate it to something else. So I see something, it's a yellow house. There was a yellow house like that in my neighborhood. And then your brain makes one more leap and it says, there was a girl that lived in that yellow house that I remember. It makes an additional leap. Now, you may be actually feeling this right now as I talk about these things. You may be trying to recall a TV show. You might be trying to recall some kind of movie. You might even be thinking about a yellow house and trying to think of, was there a yellow house in my neighborhood? Like as I speak, you're trying to relate it to something you know in your past, because that's how we perceive and that's how we take in information, and we try to relate it to something that we already know. And so if you go to a 5-second edit, so 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000, 4 1,000, 5 1,000, well, that's an eternity. If you don't think 5 seconds is an eternity, that's how long you have to wait before you can skip an ad on YouTube. It's an eternity. And so you're like, 1,000, skip ad. So that is how long it takes. And so when you make a TV show, movie, or something, you don't want edits to be 5 seconds long, because here's what the brain does. It sees it, it understands what it is, it then relates it, and then makes another leap and relates it to something else, and then makes another leap and relates it to another thing. So it says, I see something. It's a yellow house. There was a yellow house like that in my neighborhood. There was a girl there that I remember. I don't like her. I wonder if she's on Facebook. And all of a sudden, your audience is no longer thinking about what you want them to think about. They're now thinking about this girl they no longer like and wondering if she's on Facebook. It only takes 5 seconds to lose your audience. Let's go in the other direction for edits. So if 3 seconds is how the average brain takes to see something, understand something, and then relate something, well, let's go in the other direction, 2-second edits. So in a 2-second edit, your brain goes, Okay, I see something and I understand something. So I see it, it's a yellow house. Cool, got it, got it. Okay. A 1 second edit, the brain goes, I see something. And it's trying to figure out what that thing is. Like it's just up on the screen, 1/1000, 1/1000. So every time I say 1/1000, think of a new thing to look at. 1/1000, 1/1000, 1/1000, 1/1000, 1/1000. And if I was just showing you a bunch of random images, then all of a sudden you're like, what's that? What's that? What's that? What's that? What's that? What's that? And your brain's trying to recall and trying to figure out and trying to like understand all the things that you're seeing. And what your brain starts to do is starts to release chemicals. And the reason why it releases chemicals is because it thinks it's in a fight. Because here's what your brain does. If I was to throw something at you right now, we're in virtual reality and I can't, but if I was to throw something at you right now, your body would there's a reflex. Your body would react to the thing being thrown at you. Now, if you and I were in a sword fight right now and I was like sword fighting with you, your brain's like, there's a sword, there's a sword, there's a sword, there's a sword, and you're reacting to it. So when you start to see images fast, your brain's like, what's that? What's that? What's that? And it's trying to reflectively react to what it is seeing and what's happening. Here's why I brought it up. The same thing happens when you give a presentation. When you give a presentation to an audience like this right now, you're hearing me on Twitch, you're seeing me in this VR world. When you're giving a presentation yourself, you're standing up on stage, you're looking at the audience, looking back at you. Earlier in the presentation, I would say things and you would have little things pop up in front of you. But when I was reacting really fast, you were just trying to pay attention. What's happening? What's happening? What's happening? What's happening? The faster I talk, the faster you were trying to keep up with me, the faster what's happening. The same thing happens when you give a presentation. Your audience is reacting to your cadence. And so there are times where I want to slow down, to dramatically pause, because you will wonder or fill in the blanks of what I'll say next. Now, there are other times I want to talk really fastly. I want to get you excited. I want you to think about, and for those of you that go to church, you will not be able to go through another Sunday sermon without hearing the preacher do the exact same thing. I had a friend walk up to me after I gave this presentation a few years ago. He's like, oh man, that's how my preacher does it. I was like, yeah. And he's like, oh. So for now on, when you hear presenters up on stage and they want you to get excited, they want you to get amped up, they want you to feel it, they want you to be motivated, and they pick up the pace. But if they want you to really key in on something that they want you to hear and pay attention to, they will slow it down. That is why you vary your pace when you speak and present. Now, if you're like, I'm just trying to get the courage to stand up on stage. Yeah, I get it. I mean, that's me 20 years ago, just trying to get the courage to stand up on stage. And the more I did it, and the more I did it, the more I did it, the more I did it, and the more I learned, I was able to add these elements to my presentations. But I'm not saying you're going to be able to do this at first. I'm just saying this is how human beings perceive information. And if that's how they perceive information, then include those things in your presentation. Moving on to show versus tell. Now, there are ways I could have showed you that yellow house. Instead of me telling you about a yellow house and a woman who lives there or a girl who used to live there, on the screen right behind me, I could have an image of a yellow house. And the moment I have an image of a yellow house behind me, then you no longer have to use your imagination. But if I say yellow house, then you have to think of your own yellow house. So whenever you're giving a presentation, there are times you want the audience to just fill in the blanks themselves, and there's times you want the audience to have explicit information for what you want to show them. And it will take time for you to figure out the balance of that. There are times you want your audience to just think, and there's times you want your audience to know. Now, I want you to remember this moment right now. I want you to remember this part of the presentation. That when you give a presentation, there's 10 of you standing here. There's probably people on Twitch. There's people who are going to watch the recording. Here's the takeaway. All of you are hearing a different presentation. I'm saying the same words, but you're all hearing it differently. You're hearing it through your own filters. You're hearing it through your own past experiences. You're hearing it through your own interpretation of what I'm saying. You are now relating it to something that you've heard in the past. You're relating it to a talk that you gave one time. You're relating it to a talk that you want to give. You're relating it to something else because you're all doing what I've been talking about. You're relating it. So when you give a presentation in the future, let me put it this way, not everyone in the room has to like it. That's one of the things to get over for yourself. Not everyone in the room has to like the presentation you gave because they all heard a different presentation. And some people heard it and said, this isn't for me. And some people heard it and said, he's speaking directly to my soul right now. So when you are standing up in front of people, I want you to remember that not everybody has to like it. You're not enough for everybody, but you're more than enough for some. And that's okay. Because you have seen a movie that you did not like, that the person sitting next to you loved. You've seen a TV show that you couldn't recommend more than any other TV show in your entire life, and another person said, I thought it was okay. And that's what I want you to take away from this part of the presentation, is that you do not have to be more than enough for everyone, because you will be enough for somebody. All right, so how do you apply this to yourself? How do you apply this to your future presentations? Okay, so I was in a talk a few years ago at a marketing conference for marketing people by marketing people. And if you want to know what the third level of hell is, it's that. Going to a marketing conference for marketing people given by marketing people. It's not great, man. But I'm sitting in the audience, and this person up on stage was essentially giving this presentation in a way. He was saying, here's what storytelling is, and it's a hook, it's a beginning, it's a middle, it's a climax, it's an end, it's all these things. You know, here we are, we're storytellers. And I was sitting there and I was like, it's a great presentation. And then he ended without any application for how we could apply it to what we're doing. He just talked about how stories happen. I was like, that son of a bitch. He just stood up there and just like blathered on about how he's great at this and how I was like, So when it was time for Q&A at the end, I stood up and I said, hey, great presentation. Thanks so much for giving it. I have one question. How do you get started? And everyone in the room started applauding. And the guy up there was like, and I was like, apparently everyone had the same question I had. And so I want to give you how to apply this, because if I just stood up here and told you about all these things and didn't tell you how to apply it to yourself, then I would just be that guy. And I don't want to be that guy. So here's how you apply it. If you've ever sat down to a blank sheet of paper and you had to write a presentation, or you sat down at a empty PowerPoint, like file, and you're like, okay, now I got to give a presentation. You're just at the point where you're selecting which template you want. You're like, okay, yeah, let's go with this template. That template looks nice. And then it's just blank slides, and you're like, I don't know how to fill this with content. Okay, so here's my takeaway. Here's my application for how to do this. Get a blank sheet of paper, and at the top, write hook. Just write the word hook. And then halfway, like a quarter way down, write the word beginning. The middle of the page, write middle. Fourth of the way down, write climax. And the end, towards the end, write end. Because if you have the words hook, beginning, middle, climax, and end written on a sheet of paper, well, then all you have to do is fill in the spots. You're like, okay, a hook. So here is how I want you and recommend you structure your presentations. The hook, you start with asking a question. You ask the audience a question. You ask them to raise their hand when you ask the question. And so the reason why you ask the audience a question is because it stops all previous thought and it gets everyone's attention. When you stand up on stage and you say, all right, everybody, how many of you have heard of, raise your hand. And then people raise their hand and you're like, okay, cool. For those of you that didn't raise your hand, it's one of the things I'm going to talk about today. And for those of you that did raise your hand, I'm going to go more in depth than what you probably already know. So by asking your audience a question when you get started, you stop all previous thought and you get them to start thinking about what you want them to think about. I did this to you when you walked into the room. I started off by thanking Infosec Oasis, and I said, raise your hand if you're shy. And you started thinking about, am I shy? But it also was my hook. It said, I'm shy too. I got a chance to relate with you all as an audience. Then I walked into the I do and don't want to be here. That has something to do with my talk today. The hook was the question. And so you want a question that relates to the content that you're going to cover that day. So in the future, when you're creating a presentation on your paper, you write hook, beginning, middle, climax, and end. And the very first thing you start with is asking your audience a question where they have to raise their hand. And that question is hopefully something that you're going to address during the rest of your presentation. I used to give a talk to my students and I would say, hey, raise your hand if you played an instrument in high school. And so students would raise their hand and I was like, oh, cool. And so I would call on the person who had their hand raised and I was like, what was it? And they're like, violin. And I was like, oh, okay, cool, violin. How long did you play for? They're like, 3 years. Okay, cool. You over there, you raised your hand. How long, what did you play? And they're like, I played the trumpet. Ah, cool. How long did you play for? 7 years. Cool. Someone else had their hand raised. Like, what did you play? It's like, I played the drums. And I said, how long did you play for? About 4 years. And I would ask people how long they played a musical instrument for. And then I would go into my presentation. I was like, all right, so here's what my presentation is on today. It's about how we get better from sucking at something to not sucking at something. And they're like, what? I was like, for those of you that raised your hand and said I played an instrument, let's go back to you. The person who played the violin, what did it sound like when you first started playing? They're like, bad. I was like, exactly. For you who played the trumpet, what did it sound like when you first started playing the trumpet? They're like, oh, it didn't make a noise at all. That's right. You had to condition your mouth before it even made a noise. And he's like, yeah, it took a while. And I was like, cool. And for you who played the drums, what did the drums sound like? He's like, it sounded like noise. Like, that's right. It sounded like noise. And now, after year after year after year after year of practice, that violin sounds like it should. The trumpet sounds like it should. The drums sounds like it should. And so I started off by asking a question that then related to my presentation about how you go from sucking at something to not sucking at something. And we talked about that. The beginning of your talk is you personally going on a quest of knowledge. So you want to learn something, but you're going on a quest, and that quest, I want you to give the history of why you even went on the quest, the context of why you went on the quest. If you think back to the beginning of this talk, I talked about who I am. I've been a public speaker for 20 years. I got started in a church somewhere. That was the worst presentation I ever gave, and it's been better ever since. I work at Black Hills. I give a talk on Twitch. I was born a storyteller. I played with my toys. That is the history. And the reason why I'm passionate about storytelling, it is the background, the history, the context of why you even wanted to have this conversation in the first place. The reason I wanted to talk about this is because of this. That is the beginning of your presentation. The middle is all the things that you learned. What did you learn along the way? What have you learned and how did you learn it and how did it change you? I talked about how I ruined movies for all of you, but I learned movies by making movies. And I learned about the 3-second edits by editing for 3 seconds. I learned how to manipulate human emotions by being an editor. That is what I learned along the way. And I learned that sometimes you show things and sometimes you tell things, and that sometimes the audience gets it and sometimes they don't. And I learned that it's okay. And sometimes you're more than enough for people and sometimes you're not enough for people, and that's okay. That is what I learned along the way. And that is the middle of your presentation. What did you learn? What did you succeed at? And how did you fail at it? What are the lessons that you took away from that experience? And then the climax, okay? The climax is how the audience can use that information in their own life. Because if you don't have the climactic moment, because that is the whole reason anyone shows up to a talk or a presentation, is how am I going to be able to use this in my own life? Because if you don't have that part, then you're just rambling. You're just up there like just bragging at that point. And so it's here is how you can apply the thing that I learned and how you can use it in your own life. That is the climactic moment of your presentation. And then when you get to the end, you begin the end by saying this. This is my favorite phrase in any talk. It is, in conclusion. Now I want you to actually write that. When you get to the end, you say in conclusion. And then in the conclusion part, you give a too long didn't read, essentially. The reason why you say the words in conclusion when giving a speech or presentation is that if people had stopped paying attention because they started thinking about this girl that lived in a yellow house that they don't like, and they're wondering if she's on Facebook, and they're actually looking her up on Facebook to see if she's still around. If you've lost them at any time during the presentation, when you say the words in conclusion, they'll perk back up. They'll go, oh, we're getting towards the end. Okay, all right. And they'll start paying attention again. In conclusion, one of my most favorite moments ever of seeing a presentation and hearing the words in conclusion is I was watching, I was like, I don't know, 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning. I was in high school and I was on some UHF channel. And if you don't know what UHF channel is, then it's okay. I'm in my 40s. And so we didn't have that many channels back then. And I was on one of the UHF channels. And I was watching, and it was Louis Farrakhan. And if you don't know who Louis Farrakhan is, you can look him up. But Louis Farrakhan was giving a speech, and I just happened to watch it, and there was nothing else on TV. And I was like enthralled by the speech that Louis Farrakhan was giving. And I don't even know what he was talking about, but I do remember he said the words in conclusion. And I was like, okay. And then he spoke for another hour. I was just captivated at that point. I was like, in conclusion, you just keep talking. That's crazy. And so, like, if someone says in conclusion, people will start paying attention again. But in your ending, I want you to take everything that you've taught people, everything that you've covered, all the things that you've learned, the context, the history, all that, and do the best you can to inspire the people listening to you to want to do their own learning or to want to do the thing that you just talked about. And then give them one final takeaway. So you give your audience one final takeaway, and that's in the end. All right. So in conclusion, is this. I raised my hand at the beginning because I'm shy, but I do this anyway. I did, and I did not want to be here today. But the reason I showed up is because I never want to deny someone the opportunity to learn something from me. There's stuff in my head that I would rather have in your head too. Because if I can help you give presentations, then all of a sudden you can now confidently walk into any place, including a VR environment, and give a presentation on something that you're passionate about, something that brings you joy. And then if you don't remember, we're all storytellers, right? We all day long follow the hook, beginning, middle, climax, and end. That's just who we are. We just tell stories. And if you ever get the chance, I hope you give a presentation. I really do. I hope you take the knowledge that's in your head, and I hope that you're willing to stand up on a stage and fight through all the what ifs, and especially fight through the what if I'm not enough. And you give people some of the knowledge that you currently have in your head. My main takeaway, or my last takeaway for you, is this. I want you to give a talk. I really do. I want you to give a presentation. I want you to find a place. I want you to submit a CFP. I really do. I want you to give a presentation on something that's in your head. And if you're not there yet, if you're still sitting here, you're still thinking I'm not enough, if you're still thinking, there's someone out there that could give a presentation better than me, and it's not me, I don't want it to be me, then I want you to find your local Toastmasters club. If you don't know what Toastmasters is, you can Google it, go to toastmasters.com. And Toastmasters is an opportunity for you in your local community to find a Toastmasters club where you can go and spectate for a while, hear other people talk, hear other people present, and then in a nice, safe space, start to give a 2-minute presentation. And then from there, you give a 7-minute presentation. And you learn, and you keep practicing, and you keep practicing, because you may suck right now at public speaking. But the way to not suck at public speaking is to public speak and to practice. The only way you get better at public speaking is to public speak. And that is my talk today. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak at Infosec Oasis. And that's it. Thank you very much.
What a spectacular talk, you guys. Everybody give it up for Jason. Such an awesome, important talk. I think so much to be gained from this talk. Yeah,
this
no, really,
fun.
really, it's amazing. Yeah, really amazing.
Anything
I think this was one of my favorite talks. Does anybody have any questions? I can
Sean,
open it
are
up
you on
for
mute?
questions if you guys. No, am I? Am I on mute? Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you.
I can hear you.
Okay, let me see here.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Who has a question?
Let me get a bit closer.
Skylar. Okay.
So you mentioned that you had a a Twitch. What
Sure.
is your username on Twitch?
It's Banjo Crashland. So my it's twitch.tv/Banjo Crashland. And twice a week I do a Twitch stream on job hunting. And job hunting like a hacker, essentially. It's where you go through all the steps like a hacker would to break into a company, but you would just apply it to the job hunting. Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions? All right.
Anything else?
All right. I think that's looks like nobody else has a question just yet. Everybody, give it up. Give it up for Jason.
nice
This was such an
raised.
awesome talk.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Oh yeah.
I was only going to say, most of my presenting is as a broadcaster, and most of that is in 3 to 5 minute sections. I usually pop as a sort of talking head on sort of BBC and Al Jazeera and things like that. I tend to do the whole thing without the dramatic pauses or anything it depends on the show, but usually we're sort of added enthusiasm, slightly artificial enthusiasm, and talking fast.
Sure.
I wonder if you've just got any thoughts or comments or anything. I usually have about 3 to 5 points that I try and get in there and try and cram in as much as possible with enthusiasm. So it's a different approach. I mean, lots of it doesn't apply because you're not trying, you're trying to grab people's attention for a short time. I just wonder if you had any thoughts or suggestions or recommendations for that different sort of presenting.
Sure. I think of it like this. A movie trailer is always going to be cut in a way that's the goal is to excite you. That's what a movie trailer is, to leave you with a feeling of excitement, leave you with a feeling of like joy. And so if your 3 to 5 minute presentations, the whole purpose, the intent, the human emotion that you want people to feel at the end of it is joy or excitement, then you would stay in that cadence of speaking quickly, very fast the whole way through, that added enthusiasm because you want people to feel enthused about the concept that you're talking about. Now, if you were going to stretch that out to a longer presentation, then you would most likely find areas to dramatically pause so that people could catch their breath. Because if you ever want to see a movie that takes this to the extreme, it is called Spun, S-P-U-N. Spun takes that fast cutting to the extreme, and it is exhausting. It is literally exhausting. When you watch this movie for, I would say about the whole first 75 minutes is cut at an accelerated, enthusiastic rate. And then it gets to a point where they go to these long, dramatic pauses in that period of the movie, like minute 75 for about minute 80 or so. And they're doing that so that you as the audience member can catch your breath. And sometimes that's what you're doing in a presentation. You're allowing the audience to catch their breath or to slow down. And so I think if the emotion you want people to leave with after that 3 minutes is enthusiasm, then you're doing just fine.
I guess I'm trying to grab them. I'm trying to, they've got the radio on in the background or they've got the TV on and it's been a little bit a different cadence. I want them to perk up and notice, really. Yeah. I'm trying to get them to perk up and notice for that
Yeah.
short time. Not sometimes it's enthusiasm, sometimes it's sometimes it's just trying to make them notice.
Sure.
Yeah, but yeah. I tend to do my sort of this sort of presentation at the same sort of pace as well, which sort of works. But maybe I should adapt some of your ideas into that as well.
I hate to cut this off, but we've got to get ready for the next talk in about 5 minutes. So let's get one last round of applause for Jason, please.
Thank you, everyone.